Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. So today is we're just about at the halfway point through the Rains Retreat. So the first month and a half of the Rains Retreat is finished. We have a month and a half left. And as most Western countries, we don't have the three seasons. We don't have the rainy season. But for us here in Canada, especially in Winnipeg, um, the last week or so, we can really feel that it feels like summer's coming to the end. So even though the weather's okay, you can feel there's a cold bite in the air and the cold breeze. And it really has that feeling of the change of seasons. And the other day I was chatting with a layman in Australia, and he was telling me he had just been at one of one of the monasteries there, and they had been having a work bee, so a day when everyone came out to help clean up the monastery, and they were emptying out the gutters, collecting all the leaves and all the sticks and branches in the forest, and they were taking them to burn because Australia has a lot of problems with forest fires, a lot of problems with it's very flammable there, so they have to get rid of all that extra those sticks and all that extra fuel on the forest floor. And he was saying that it's coming to the end of the burning season because it's winter right now in Australia, and in the summer it becomes very hot, and so you're not allowed to burn at that time. So this is the very end of the burning season. And I was telling him that when I was in Australia, it was just before the burning season started, and we were counting down the days till the burning season could start. And so um, these are, very clear signs of this anicca or impermanence. So, as we know, the Buddha taught these things called the three characteristics, the tilakkhana. So these are three characteristics that, are shared by all conditioned phenomena. So the first one is anicca, which is impermanence. Then there's dukkha, which is we try either translate it as usually suffering or unsatisfactoriness, but it's this broad spectrum of from stress to suffering and unsatisfactoriness. And the third one is not self. So when we things are impermanent, they're changing all the time, but but a lot of times we really don't notice that change. That change is sometimes we don't perceive it because it can be too subtle, these kind of gradual changes happening all the time, and we're not really paying attention to it. Or sometimes these changes, this impermanence, is hidden by continuity, by things just going on. So, for example, if you know someone and say they had long hair and they get a haircut. You initially it's very, jarring. It's very different. You're like, oh wow, it looks very different. But then over time, you get so used to their new haircut, you completely forgot about their old haircut. This is the new normal. And you get so used to it. And so you forget about that change which had happened. You forget about this impermanence. But times like this where, it's very clear, it's very obvious that, things are changing. One season is coming to the end, a new season is beginning. So when impermanence is so kind of in your face like this, so obvious like this, um, this can really give us a great opportunity to practice. And we can really use opportunities like this for our practice, for our contemplation, for our reflections. So there's kind of different ways we can go with this. One of them is we can we can bring up the reflection on how quickly the time is going by. Because again, like when I was chatting with this man in Australia, it was like, oh, it seems like it was just yesterday I was there in Australia waiting for the season to start. Now the season's coming to an end. Or, everyone here, it's like, oh wow, summer's coming to an end already. That seems very quick. Or, the rains retreat, it seems like we just started and it's already half over. So when we have things like this, we can really bring up this reflection that was uh, given to us by the Buddha. And for the monks, we chant it quite often in our morning and evening chanting. We have this one chant called the 10 things that should be reflected on again and again by one who has gone forth. And one of these reflections is the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? So in opportunities like this, where it does feel to a lot of us like, oh wow, it's already changed. Can't believe, it's another season is gone, another rains retreat is almost gone. We can bring up this reflection, and this reflection is meant to give rise to a sense of urgency in our practice, and just to remind us and to keep bringing to mind that yeah, life is finite. There's not a limited time, so I should make use of the time I have, because before you know it, it's the time is up. So, and we never know exactly how much time is left. So, so reflecting on this can give rise to urgency, give rise to uh, looking at what's important and what's not. When, oh, there's only this much time left, this much time has passed, we can say, oh, well, these other things in life, they're not really that important, but actually working on practicing, working on our Dhamma practice actually, really is important. So this is one of the ways we can go with reflections like this. But another way we can go with seeing this impermanence coming up is we can work on developing something called Anicca Sanna, or the perception of impermanence. So, so when I was a junior monk, Ajahn Jayasaro, he is a very senior Western monk, an English monk. And many years ago, long before I went to Thailand, he had been the abbot of Wat Pah Nanachat, and he's now lives on in a hermitage by himself, but he's quite a famous lay teacher in Thailand. And so, a few times a year, he'd always come back to Wat Pah Nanachat to visit and, to teach the new monks, give them encouragement. And one of the things he would encourage us to do is to work on developing this anicca sanya, this perception of impermanence. So one of the ways we can do that is by looking at endings. So he'd always encourage us to look at endings. So of course, something big like the ending of a season, the is it's very big. It's very easy to look at, and we can reflect on that because before that, it just especially say we're having a very hot summer. You just feel like, oh, it's hot like this all the time. It's always going to be like this, or you take it for granted. Oh, the weather's great. I enjoy it. It's always going to be like this. And then it changes. And so looking at that change, we can start reflecting on impermanence. But it doesn't, to bring up this perception of impermanence, we don't just limit it to the big changes, we can bring this up all the time in our lives. We can always be reflecting on impermanence, looking at endings. So, the ending of the day, the ending of a meeting, the ending of, even the ending of a conversation, any of the times, just bringing that awareness to an ending, to when things change, when things come to an end, and it'll start giving this, bringing up this perception of impermanence, because even though most of us, have heard impermanence, yeah, everything's going to change. And, we all know on some hand that, at some point we're going to get old, or, some point a car is going to break down, or whatever it is, that nothing's permanent. A lot of time our understanding and our like of that is very superficial. It doesn't go very deep. So, you see everyone knows that at some point they're going to get old. It's just kind of a commonly known fact of life. But you can see how many people are shocked when it happens. That time that first gray hair comes in, or those times when you first notice that your hairline is backing up quite a bit, and these can be quite shocking to people, even though on a certain level we know it's going to happen. So the more we practice and the deeper our practices come with this, the more we're going to be able to accept that and not even just accept it, but benefit from it. So the Buddha taught us that with this understanding, with this wisdom, that there's different levels to it and different depths of it. So the first one, the most superficial or the least deep level of understanding, the Buddha called Sutta Mayapanya. So this is this level of understanding of wisdom we get just by hearing something, hearing a teaching. And, so for example, like hearing someone tells us, yeah, everything's impermanent. And, we kind of, okay, yeah, and it's going to have one type of effect on us, but it's not going to be really that deep. And the next deeper um, type of wisdom or type of understanding is what's called Chintamayapanya. So Chintamayapanya, this is the level of wisdom or understanding we're going to get from contemplating something. So not with our meditation, but just thinking. So thinking about a concept, picking it apart, trying to understand it in that way. So again, if someone tells us, okay, at some point we're going to get old, or at some point everything's impermanent. And so we start thinking about that. We start trying to understand it on that level. So again, this is going to be deeper than just hearing it and accepting that. But the level we really want to work for, and which is really going to start uprooting our suffering, uprooting the deeply held wrong views we have, is what's called Bhavana Mayapanya. So Bhavana Mayapanya, this is the wisdom we get from our meditation. So instead of just using the thinking mind to contemplate these things, we're actually using our meditation. We're using the power of our samadhi, the power of these contemplation. And this is where it's really going to start going deep. And this is where it's going to be having that deep understanding and really of these different realities of life, the way things are. And this is where it's really going to start uprooting these causes of suffering, uprooting these attachments we have, uprooting these all the craving we have, all the wrong views we have, and really remove that suffering, remove those causes of suffering. So So, but to get there, it takes practice. We don't always we can't just jump straight to that point. So one of the things we do is, we develop these perceptions of this by, constantly bringing up these reflections, constantly. So for example, with the impermanence, constantly bringing up this reflection on impermanence, contemplating in our meditation, but thinking about it. And then we bring up this perception and we start developing this perception of impermanence. And Lopra Biak, he would talk about how it is good to develop these perceptions, the sanya of something, and this is going to help lead to the panya, lead to the actual wisdom. And so this is something, we need to do in our practice is just start, working on bringing these up again and again, and really changing the way we pay attention to things, the way we look at things. So there's this thing, the Buddha really praised and spoke of the importance of something called yoniso manasikara. So we quite often translate this as wise attention or wise reflection. So this is, we're looking at something, and as far as I understand it, we're looking at it through a a more of a different angle, through a kind of a Dhamma angle to try to help us. We look at, instead of trying to see things as impermanent, trying to see things as unsatisfactory or are suffering, or really trying to see things as not self. We're trying to see the unbeautiful, and those are beautiful things we attach to. Because, when there's something beautiful there, the mind goes out to it. The Buddha said, we grasp at its signs and features. So we really want to um, not do that. So using our mindfulness and using these wise reflections and this, we're looking at it and looking at the unbeautiful aspects of it. We're looking at the impermanent in those things we deep down view as permanent. So, um, so again, as we continue to practice this way and continue to work with these perceptions, with these reflections, it's going to slowly start to change the way we think, change the way we see things, and it's going to start reducing the amount of suffering we have. It's going to start reducing the amount of attachments we have. Um, but one of the things is when we start doing this, it's going to take some time. A lot of times we really want those like the really quick results. Sometimes you read those things in the suttas about the monk who just listens to a Dhamma talk and they become enlightened, or sometimes you read those Zen stories where uh, the monk is given a quite koan, like a riddle, and then his teacher slaps him, and then boom, he's enlightened. But it's generally not that way for most of us. It's something we have to put in effort, and we have to keep developing, and it's going to start kind of slowly changing, slowly developing, and a lot of times it's only when to judge how it's changed, to judge how it's changing our lives, we have to look back. So, a lot of times the people around us can see it, but for us, the changes can be slow. So to judge how we're developing in practice, to judge how this is coming along, how this is improving our lives, how it's reducing our suffering, one of the things is we can just try to think back, remember how things were before. And sometimes you'll think like, oh, actually, yeah, yeah, I've improved a lot. You'll have some situation, someone says something to you and you won't react. And you'll think back and be like, wow, a couple of years ago, if someone said that to me, wow, I'd have got really angry or I've been really hurt, really offended by that. Um, but now it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, and so a lot of times the people around us can see this. It's one of the things that for the Western monks living in Thailand, the monks at Wat Pah Nanachat, it's one of the things that really helps bring the parents around because a lot of times the parents, coming from different countries, they're coming from Germany or America or New Zealand or wherever, and it's quite an unusual thing for your son to go and ordain as a monk in Thailand. Like I was talking with my parents not too long ago, and we were talking about it, and I think they're literally the only parents in the city who have a son who went to Thailand to ordain as a monk. So, and it's a big city, 830,000 people. So it's quite an unusual thing in the West, and it can be very difficult for a lot of parents. And so, uh, but when they start seeing the changes, they come and visit and they see the changes that have occurred in their sons and how they've improved, become more peaceful, more happy, a lot of times more mature. It can really bring the parents around and they say, oh, actually, this is actually really good what they're doing. Actually, it's beneficial. I can see how much he's improved. So actually, this is a pretty good thing. We had this one American monk and before he ordained, he was this really kind of scattered hippie backpacker, was just going all over the world, didn't have a lot of responsibilities. From the stories he tells, it sounds like he probably smoked way too much pot and was just living that kind of lifestyle. And then he came to the monastery, just, was backpacking through and stopped there. And he became really inspired and ended up staying and ordaining. And after a few years of being a monk, his parents came to visit, and and they were so impressed with how much he had matured. He had his act together. He wasn't just traveling all over the place. He was receiving lay people. He had really like, become an adult and really had his whole like character had really improved. And so before that, his parents were iffy about him staying a monk. But after seeing him, his parents were telling him, it's like, you got to stay. You shouldn't disrobe, you stay as a monk. This is really good for you. And so it's like that, with everyone, when you start practicing, generally people will see and be after a while and be like, they can see those changes. And again, this monk didn't really see them in himself. It was just, you're just living every day, it's that those gradual changes. So we don't see it. Um, but for someone else, when it is that big change, that big shock, they can really see it and see the benefit of this. And so I would like to offer that to everyone as a bit of a reflection this evening.